Today I'm reading The Power of Poppy Pendle by Natasha Lowe. Chapter 1. Poppy. Poppy Pendle was born on the floor of a bakery. Patricie Marie Claire, the fancy French bakery in the little town of Potts Bottom. Now, people don't usually give birth on bakery floors in the middle of a Thursday afternoon, but Edith Pendle did just that. She had no choice, even though her baby wasn't due for another 2 weeks. Poppy pushed her way out with the speed of an express train and was immediately wrapped up in a cake-scented tea towel by the kind lady who ran the shop. The customers cheered, and someone handed Edith Pendle a bag of little warm almond cakes. Sitting up in her mother's arms, Poppy breathed in deeply and reached for the bag of cakes. Then she did something quite unexpected. She gulped them all down, waved her sugary fingers at the crowd, smiled, and gave a contented burp. Although the Pendles didn't approve of giving birth in a bakery, no one could deny that their daughter was an amazing and extremely unusual child. By 3 months old she had learned to walk and could carry bags of shopping up Pudding Lane to the Pendles' little brick house. At the post office she usually caused quite a stir, leaping up and posting all the out-of-town mail through the top letter slot. "She's really advanced," Roger Pendle liked to brag to their neighbors. One late autumn day something happened that made Poppy's already proud parents even prouder. Mrs. Pendle's sister, Vivian, had come for a visit, and it was such a pleasant afternoon that the Pendles had decided to have tea in the garden. Poppy had carried out her high chair and was settled next to Auntie Viv when her mother came parading across the lawn bearing a strange pink-tinted cake on a tray. "I've made an orange cake," Edith Pendle announced, which was quite surprising in itself because she hardly ever cooked. "I got the recipe from the back of a can of tinned salmon. Apparently it's full of protein." Auntie Viv covered her mouth in horror, and Poppy gagged, kicking her feet in the air. Poor Edith Pendle abruptly stumbled forward as if she'd been pushed from behind, and dropped the cake on the grass with a splat. "Oh dear," Mr. Pendle said with a hint of relief in his voice. "My cake!" Mrs. Pendle wailed, while Poppy babbled away in her own private language. She waved her dribbly fingers about, and a gorgeous chocolate cake covered in pink sugar roaches suddenly appeared on the table. "Now, where in heaven did that come from?" Auntie Viv gasped. Poppy chuckled and sucked on her toes, blowing pale pink bubbles into the air. As they popped, showers of sugared almonds scattered down. "It's Poppy!" Mr. Pendle cried, staring at his daughter in disbelief. "She's got the gift, Edith! She's really got the gift! I don't believe it!" Poppy was clapping her hands together, and little chocolate doves were flying out of them. Mr. Pendle plucked one up and popped it into his mouth. "Oh, fantastic, Edith! Our Poppy's magic!" Mr. Pendle worked in a shoe shop called Happy Feet, selling shoes to the people of Potts Bottom. It was a boring, smelly work, being surrounded by cheesy feet all day long, and he certainly didn't want his daughter to follow in his footsteps. Now, they could stop worrying, because Poppy was destined for much greater things. Crouching beside her, he stuck his face close to Poppy's. "Who's a clever girl, then? Who's going to be a witch when she grows up?" "I'm putting her name down for Arthur's Field Academy first thing Monday morning," Mrs. Pendle declared. "There hasn't been a witch in our family for 3 generations, not since Granny Mabel. I'm just tinkle proud. I'm so proud. I do wish Poppy hadn't been born in a bakery, though." She sighed. "It doesn't seem fitting, somehow." Poppy made a loud noise like a raspberry. A tiny gray cloud formed and hovered about 12 inches above the tea table. "Oh, look, she's at it again!" Mr. Pendle exclaimed. The Pendles watched in excitement as the storm cloud erupted, pouring water down onto the chocolate cake. Then Poppy scrunched up her face, turned the color of an overripe tomato, and burst into tears. Straight after breakfast on Monday, the Pendles telephoned Miss Lavina Roach. the headmistress at Rothersfield Academy. Miss Roach had never heard of baby performing magic before. "That is really quite astonishing if what you are telling me is true," she told Edith Pendle. "But before I put Poppy down on our waiting list, I'd appreciate seeing the child for myself. Sometimes parents go to rather extreme lengths to get their girls into Rothersfield. We are, as I'm sure you well know, Mrs. Pendle, the only accredited school for magic in the country, and we are very selective." "Oh, just wait till you see our little Poppy," Mrs. Pendle said. "I'm sure you'll be suitably surprised." So the next afternoon, Poppy was promptly brought over to Rothersfield for her interview. As the Pendles were ushered into the headmistress's office, Poppy kept trying to climb out of her carriage and trot back toward the door. "No, sweetheart," Edith Pendle insisted, grasping her daughter by the hand so she couldn't escape. "Looks like she has other plans," Miss Roach said, smiling down at Poppy. "But she doesn't understand what an honor it is to be here," Edith Pendle said, tugging her daughter into the room. "This really is quite an occasion for the Pendle family." "I've brought this with me," Poppy's father began, carefully extracting a sheet of white paper from a cardboard tube and unrolling it across Mrs. Roach's desk. "Our family tree," he announced, bursting with pride and pointing a finger at the chart. "Well, my wife's family tree, really. That's great-granny Mabel right there," he said, tapping at the paper. "But I'm sure you know all about her." "Indeed!" Miss Roach lowered her head in reverence. "What an honor for your all being related to Mabel Radcliffe, one of the best head girls Rothersfield ever had. And look," Roger Pendle said, breathing heavily over the chart, "her great-great-great-grandmother Irene had the gift, as you see. So it runs in the family. We can go right back to the 13th century." "Certainly quite remarkable, Mr. Pendle. Now please, won't you all sit down?" Miss Roach suggested. "I'll ring for some tea and biscuits." Poppy immediately climbed up into one of the chairs facing Miss Roach's desk and started to suck on her fingers. "While we wait, why don't you show me what sort of magic little Poppy can do?" "All right, then. Come on, sweetheart," Mrs. Pendle said, tickling her daughter under the chin. "Show this nice lady your tricks." Poppy blew a raspberry, but nothing happened. "Make some chocolate birdies appear," her father encouraged. Poppy paid no attention, and it was only when the school secretary brought in a tea tray that she began to get excited. "Is Poppy allowed a biscuit?" Miss Roach said, offering round a table of chocolate shortbread. "We have a wonderful chef here at Rothersfield. Everything's homemade." Poppy gurgled, bouncing up and down in her little chair. The little marshmallow ball started to burst out of her lap and onto the desk like popcorn exploding from a popcorn maker. One of them landed right in Miss Roach's cup of tea. "Now there's my clever little girl," Miss Pendle said, planting a kiss on Poppy's forehead. The soft, sticky balls were bouncing all over the room, but Poppy ignored them, munching away on a biscuit. When she'd finished, she licked her fingers, gave a satisfied sigh, and blew out hundreds of tiny gold stars. "Quite the show, eh?" Mr. Pendle said, brushing bits of stardust off his suit. "Unbelievable," Lavina Roach agreed. "I've never seen anything like it. Your daughter's extraordinary. Rothersfield Academy would be honored to offer her a place. She's far too young now, of course, but when she's 7 we'll be expecting her." Poppy scrunched up her face and blew a loud, windy raspberry. Pink berry-shaped bubbles floated into the air, and when they popped, an overbearing stench of rotten fruit filled the room. Miss Roach gave a nervous laugh. "It's a good thing your daughter's only 6 months old," she remarked. "Otherwise, I might think she didn't want to come to Rothersfield Academy at all." The older she got, the more apparent it became that it was cakes Poppy wanted to make, and not spells. Around her 5th birthday she discovered a cookbook, "The Art of Simple Baking," lodged under the fridge and covered in dust. It had been a wedding present to the Pendles and was still in its cellophane wrapping. Poppy dug the book out and spent most of her free time studying the photographs of tarts and cakes and rich butter cookies. At first her parents hadn't minded, because it kept her from staring longingly out the window, waiting for the school bus to drive by. If Poppy'd had her way, she'd be going to the local elementary school with all the other kids in Potts Bottom. But Mr. and Mrs. Pendle refused to send her. Apparently, 7 is the ideal age to begin learning for a witch. Edith Pendle told Poppy. "There are different methods up at the academy. I don't want you to interfere with them, sweetheart. Anyway, I'm not sure I want you mixing with non-magic children," she had said. "You're special, Poppy." And Poppy certainly seemed to be. She'd managed to teach herself to read, just so she could try out the recipes printed in the Pot's Bottom Gazette. "All Poppy ever does is bake," Edith Pendle said, fretting to her best friend, Maxine Gibbons, one spring afternoon. Maxine lived next door, and they were talking across the backyard fence, while Poppy laid on the grass reading her newest edition of Good Eats magazine. She'd bought herself a subscription with her birthday money when she turned 6, and loved to pore over the pictures. "I don't know where she gets it from, I really don't. Certainly not me." Edith gave a nervous laugh. "What's wrong with a nice box mix, I might ask?" Maxine giggled. "Well, she was born in a French bakery." "Yes, but we don't mention that in front of her," Edith Pendle said, lowering her voice. "Honestly, Maxine, that's not something Poppy needs to know about. She'd want to buy bread there or find out how they make those fancy cakes." Mrs. Pendle studied her daughter longingly. "I just don't understand it. I really don't." She shook her head and sighed. "What Poppy should be doing is concentrating on her magic." "So when is your first day at Rutherford?" Maxine Gibbons asked. "Not till September, but I'm so excited, Maxine. You should see the uniform, deep purple with gold trim. Poppy's going to look so smart." "She doesn't seem very enthusiastic, does she?" Maxine said. "No." Poppy's mother frowned. Thank goodness she won't have time for this ridiculous cooking nonsense when she starts school. Maxine shrieked with laughter and called over to Poppy. "You need to get up cooking some magic spells, my girl. Witches don't make cakes, they make magic." "But I don't want to be a witch," Poppy whispered, wondering if there was something wrong with her. She wished she could stop herself from turning 7. Unfortunately, she knew that sort of magic was impossible for her, and in a few months' time, whether she liked it or not, she was going to be starting at Rutherford. Chapter 2. No Time to Bake. The next 3 years were miserable ones for Poppy. She hated everything about Rutherford Academy. Her life revolved around magic, and all the homework she was expected to do. Poppy had almost no time left over for the things she really loved, cooking. She would tiptoe downstairs extra early most days, just so she could still bake. "You cannot go off to school looking like this," Edith Pendle grumbled one morning, wiping at a butter stain on Poppy's uniform. "I mean, honestly, Poppy, you're almost 10 years old and you still can't keep yourself clean." "Oh, but Mom, don't these look good?" Poppy said, staring at a glossy picture of coconut cupcakes. "I had to try to make them." Her May issue of Good Eats magazine lay open on the counter, covered in blobs of raw butter. Mrs. Pendle gave an exasperated sigh. "If you insist on getting up at the crack of dawn and mucking about in the kitchen, please wear an apron." "I'm sorry, Mum, I forgot." "What I'd like to know is, how come you never forget when you run out of flour or sugar or to reorder that cooking magazine of yours?" "I'm honestly not sure," Poppy replied as a blob of buttercream landed on her shirt. "Well, in case you've forgotten, it's the step-up ceremony next week, Poppy, and you'll become an intermediate witch. That means you're going to have to start focusing on your work more." Poppy's stomach flipped over. She hated thinking about the step-up ceremony. It was an event anticipated with much excitement by most of the performers, because they would now be old enough to take flying lessons. Poppy had no desire to step up. School was awful as it was without having to worry about climbing onto a broomstick. "Oh, Mom, that reminds me," Poppy said, sniffing the air and pulling a tray of cupcakes from the oven. "Could you send me a report card, please? It's in the side pocket of my backpack, and I've got to take it back to school today." "Your report card? Come on, Poppy! Why on earth didn't you give it to me last night?" Mrs. Pendle crouched down by the table and rummaged in Poppy's backpack. It was slumped on the floor, and she huffed annoyance as she pulled out a long, crumpled envelope. "These things really do matter." "I'm really sorry, Mom." I know, you just forgot. Oh my goodness, though. Will you look at this?" Poppy's mother clapped a hand over her mouth. 6 eggs and 2 bees. B in spell chanting and B in chemistry. "I can't sing, Mom. That's why Miss Robinson gave me a B for spell chanting. And what's about this B for chemistry?" Mrs. Pendle glanced at her daughter. Mom, I hate chemistry. It's my worst subject. Isn't it either like cooking? You're good at that, Poppy, mixing ingredients together. And then, unable to stop herself, she added, if you put as much time into chemistry as you do baking, you'd be making the honor roll. But I do love to cook, Poppy said softly, and I really don't like making spells. Mrs. Pendle ignored this. Still, considering all your classes are advanced, you've done very well. I think this calls for a treat. Really, Mom? Thanks. There's a new book on cake decorating that sounds great. Could I have that? Mrs. Pendle did not reply. Instead, she called out, 6 A's, Roger! Waving Poppy's report card at her husband, who had just walked into the kitchen. Well done, love. That's fantastic. Roger Pendle smiled at Poppy. Although it doesn't surprise me one bit. You're as smart as your great-granny Mabel. Oh, I know what we should do to celebrate. We should take Poppy to the Museum of Magical Discoveries, Edith suggested. That'd make a lovely treat, wouldn't it? If you don't mind, I'd rather have the cookbook, Poppy said, but Edith Pendle was already hurrying out the back door, clutching Poppy's report card. She couldn't wait to show it to Maxine. It wasn't that Poppy tried particularly hard to do it well at school, and magic just happened to be something she was extraordinarily good at. Even when her mind drifted in class, which it tended to do rather often, she was usually able to keep up. In math, they were learning how to divide large quantities of spell ingredients and add different potions together to make a spell balance correctly. Geography was all about studying the best places in the world to practice magic. Location, 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 Miss Hickle, their geometry teacher, was constantly telling the four formers. You didn't want to practice magic in the desert, too hot, not enough water, and it was almost impossible to keep your ingredients from drying out. Hilly areas and fine, but mountainous areas like the Swiss Alps were terrible. Spells ricocheted about the rocky walls and ended up in all the wrong places. Not that Poppy had the slightest interest in any of these things, but she did try to pay attention, even when she was thinking about new cooking recipes. The day before the step-up ceremony, Poppy celebrated her 10th birthday. She invited Megan, Roberts, Fanny Freeman, and some of the other girls in her class to a party, but apparently none of them could come, which didn't surprise Poppy one bit. She'd only invited them to please her mothers. These girls weren't real friends. Not sort of friends you could laugh and share secrets with. In fact, most of them teased Poppy because she liked to read cooking magazines and sometimes called her cake head because her hair always smelled of baking. So it was only Auntie Viv coming for tea. Poppy preferred it that way. As soon as Edith's sister arrived, she wrapped Poppy up in a perfumy hug and planted sticky pink kisses all over her niece's face. Wait till you see what I've brought you, Poppy. You're gonna love it. Is it the new Mifflin tin like I asked for, Auntie Viv? Don't be silly, Auntie Viv chuckled, watching Poppy unwrap her present. It's a briefcase for all your important spells and things. Now that you're going to be an intermediate witch, you've got to look the part. No more scuffy old backpack. While Poppy's parents oohed and awed over the real leather briefcase, Poppy opened up the rest of her gifts. She got a new wand case, a miniature practice cauldron, and a DVD about famous witches. There's a picture of a scary-looking woman on the front cover, peering out from behind bars. It was called Witches Who Strayed Off the Magical Path, a close-up look at some famous witches who let their magic lead them astray. You'll enjoy that, Mrs. Pendle said. It talks about what a big responsibility being magic is, and how these witches abused their powers and became evil. Ended up on the dark side. She shuddered. So don't go getting any ideas, her father joked. Poppy gave him a weak smile. Can we have my cake now? She asked. It's a new recipe. I think you're all going to love it. Ooh, that's stunning, Auntie Viv sighed, as Poppy put a 3-layer lemon cake on the table. It was covered in swirls of creamy frosting with yellow roses, piped around the edge. Leaning toward her sister, Vivian whispered, Poppy couldn't have made that. You must have got it from Pasterie Marie Claire. Of course Poppy made it. Edith Pendle frowned at Auntie Viv, although I told her it was bad luck baking her own birthday cake. But I wanted to, Mom. It was fun. Yes, let's all enjoy it, Edith said, thrusting forks around the table, because once Poppy's an intermediate witch, she'll be far too busy to bake. And no more reading cookbooks either, Edith Pendle sniffed. Nothing but a waste of time. Poppy didn't trust herself to speak. It was her birthday, and she should have been happy, but she only felt sad as she sucked lemon frosting off her finger. Chapter 3 Chipet Paluda Step up today, Mrs. Pendle announced, flinging open Puppy's curtains. She straightened a framed print of her family tree that hung on Puppy's bedroom wall. My parents were so disappointed when I didn't get the gift of magic, Edith Pendle said wistfully. I tried and tried, but you either have it or you don't. I wish I didn't, Puppy whispered into her pillow. After Mrs. Pendle had left the room, Puppy dragged herself out of bed and put on the clean uniform her mother had laid out. She trudged downstairs, stopping for a moment in front of the photo of Great Granny Mabel that sat on the hall table. The one Poppy's parents said looked just like her. And although Poppy hated to admit it, even she could see the resemblance. They both had the same blue eyes and flyaway brown hair, and an almost identical band of freckles sprinkled across their nose. Except the girl smiling back at her wore a purple graduation gown and clutched a rolled-up diploma. I wish I'd known you, Poppy sighed. Then perhaps I wouldn't be so mad at you. After all, it wasn't Great Granny Mabel's fault that Poppy had to go to Ruthersfield Academy, even though her great-grandmother had been the one to pass along the stupid witch gene. Why couldn't I have just been a baker? Poppy whispered. Then I would have wanted to be just like you. Most mornings Poppy rocked up to school, but since today was the step-up ceremony, and it was pouring rain, Mr. and Mrs. Pendle insisted on driving her. As Poppy got into the car, she avoided looking at their custom-made license plate, which said, "We love her witch." Above it was a purple and gold bumper sticker declaring, "Proud parents of a Ruthersfield girl." "Well, now you're really on your way now, love," Roger Pendle remarked. "Not a novice anymore." Poppy watched as the local school bus rumbled past. A pale girl with a halo of frizzy curls had her face pressed against glass. She looked about as lonely as Poppy felt. Perhaps if they both went to the same elementary school they could have been friends. "I wish I were riding on that," Poppy whispered. "No, you don't," Mrs. Pendle said firmly. A sick, anxious feeling had lodged in Poppy's stomach, the way it always did when Ruthersfield came into view. The academy was an imposing stone building that looked more like a fortress than a school for witches. Flocks of older girls were landing their broomsticks gracefully on the pavement, and Poppy tripped as she got out of the car. Several of the girls tittered. "Don't forget your briefcase," Mrs. Pendle called after her. Grabbing it quickly, Poppy hurried off with her head down, trying to appear invisible. She could feel her socks start to slip, and using her free hand, Poppy gave them a quick tug, stumbling forward as she did so. "Clever poke!" Someone giggled behind her. Poppy could tell from the voice it was Deirdre Lambert, one of the popular girls in 7th form. "Clever poke!" Deirdre taunted again, and Poppy bit down on her lip, trying not to cry. She was regularly called Clutterpoke, which in Ruthersfield slang meant clumsy. It was, as Poppy swiftly learned during her first year, an extremely unflattering term. "Deirdre Lambert," a sharp voice cut through the noise. "Apologize at once." Turning around, Poppy saw Miss Corns, their magical management teacher, swoop down on a broomstick. "That sort of language will not be tolerated." "Sorry," Deirdre mumbled, examining her purple fingernails. "It was only a joke." "No, Deirdre, it was disrespectful. When you wear the Ruthersfield uniform, you represent the whole school. Your behavior mirrors what this academy stands for, and it does not stand for catty meanness." Deirdre blushed. "I'm sorry," she muttered again. "Very well." Miss Corns softened her voice. "Cobweb sweeping duty after school for a week, please." "A whole week? Every day?" "Which means dusting well in all the corners." "Yes, Miss Corns," Deirdre said, glaring at Poppy. This did seem a rather strong punishment, and Poppy gave her an apologetic smile. It was not well received. Deirdre narrowed her eyes and silently mouthed, "Cakehead." Then, linking arms with another girl, she flicked back her long dark hair and flounced off. Not a good start to step-up day, and as Poppy trapezed along behind them, she could feel the sharp metal clasp of the briefcase scraping against her leg. Inside the great hall, it sounded like a convention of spring robins. Only Poppy sat quietly, surrounded by twittering girls. As Miss Roach walked onto the stage and stood with her arms folded, gradually the room fell silent. "Welcome, four formers," she began. "You've all been here for 3 years now, learning what it takes to be witch. And today you are no longer novices. Today you step up." Excited whispering rippled through the crowd, and Miss Roach waited until the room was silent again. "It is indeed an honor to become an intermediate witch, and the next few years will be challenging ones, requiring plenty of hard work and determination. We expect great things from our girls." Miss Roach looked directly at Poppy, who had been dreaming about chocolate cream pie. Shifting in her chair, Poppy leaned forward, trying to focus, but it was difficult to stop her mind from wandering. Smothering a yawn, Poppy shifted in her chair again, as the headmistress' voice swelled. "But let us not forget that for hundreds of years witches have had a terrible reputation. They are considered evil and destructive, and were completely misunderstood, usually because of one or two genuinely wicked creatures. Now, of course, we have strict laws and regulations governing the art of magic, and I'm, as sure you're well aware, our own maximum security prison, especially for those witches who do not comply." "Scrubs," Poppy heard Megan Roberts whisper. "If you end up in that prison, you never get out." "Witchcraft has come a long way," Miss Roach declared. "It is a highly respected profession these days. But as you prepare to step up to the next level, let me make one thing very clear." Here the headmistress paused a moment, staring at each girl in turn. "Black magic will not be tolerated," she said. "I repeat, black magic will not be tolerated. So continue to practice your craft wisely. Become the best witches you can be. And remember our school motto, girls. Cabit follow da." The students chanted, "Cabit follow da." Miss Roach warbled with emotion, that ancient pagan saying, written down by the first high priestess of magic. "And we know what it means, don't we?" Miss Roach held her arms wide as the girls yelled back, "Follow your passion!" "Yes, and today, as you leave your novice years behind, I ask all of you to do just that. Follow your passion and strive for excellence." Everyone applauded, although Poppy was deep in thought as she clapped her hands together, pondering whether dark chocolate or milk chocolate would make a better pie filling. Chapter 4. Madeline Reynolds. "I stayed in the air for 5 minutes," Megan Roberts bragged to the lunch table, "and my broomstick didn't even wobble." They'd just come in from the first flying lesson, and Poppy was squashed at the end of the table, her long legs sticking out to the side. She was reading her newest Good Eats magazine, paying no attention to the conversation. Dear D. Lambert walked by and gave Poppy's shoe a slight kick. As Poppy glanced up, Dear D mouthed the words "clumsy clutterpoke" and gave a spectacular horsey sneer. The girls at the table giggled, and Megan Roberts whispered behind her hands, "Poppy is so weird." Megan was slipping through the May issue of Young Witch, and had stopped at a page showing a smiling girl in a black and green striped leotard, sitting astride a broomstick. At the top of the page in bold letters it says, "10 exercise to help tone your broomstick flying muscles." Sucking in her stomach, Megan sat up straight and looked around the table. "Stomach in, shoulders back when you're riding a broomstick." All the other girls copied except for Poppy, who was staring at a glossy picture of a caramel tart. "Poppy doesn't need to practice her exercises," Megan said, carefully balancing a spoon across the tip of her index finger. "She's been flying in secret." "I have not," Poppy said, feeling her face grow warm. "Never even held a broom before today, except to sweep the floor with. Then how are you so good?" "I don't really know, but I didn't like it. It actually made me feel a bit sick." Megan smirked at her friend Fanny Freeman. "That's so dumb," she said. "I couldn't get my broomstick off the ground." Fanny groaned, slumping forward over the table. "Being a novice was so much easier. All this extra hard work they're piling on. I'm never going to graduate." "Do you want to be a witch, then?" Poppy asked, and Fanny lifted her head to stare at Poppy. "Of course I want to be a witch, cakehead. What's the point of giving the gift if you don't use it? I'm not sure, Poppy said softly, chewing the end of her braid. She didn't have an answer for that. In history class, the first big project as intermediate witches was to pick one famous Ruffersfield alumna to write about. Poppy chose Madeline Reynolds, which caused quite an upset because she was a witch who had gone over to the dark side. Miss Jenkins, the history teacher, tried to steer Poppy towards someone else. "We have so many marvelous witches from our past to admire. What about Betty Toomley, who invented the lost and found tool? So many program what's been lost, the glove, your house keys, and even your homework. Then sweep the finder around and beep when the missing item has been located. Or Catherine Jones, Miss Jenkins suggested. Now there was an extraordinary woman. She used magic to invent chocolate-flavored Brussels sprouts, odd in the nutrition of regular sprouts, but delicious for children to eat. And let's not forget your great-grandmother, Mabel Radcliffe. Oh, I'll never forget her, Poppy said. That quick hair-growing potion she came up with is terrific for bald-headed men, and you can get in such lovely colors. Miss Jenkins scrunched up her face in concern. These women were amazing, Poppy. Why pick Madeline Reynolds? Because she interests me. She was head girl at Ruffersfield, a straight A student, and then went on to become the worst storm brew in history. Joined the dark side. We had a monsoon mother for 6 straight years until she was put behind bars. Miss Jenkins shuddered. It was Madeline Reynolds who washed away the bottom half of Italy. Why would you write about someone like that? To find out why she did it, Poppy said. I think she must have been very unhappy. And then under her breath, so Miss Jenkins couldn't hear, she whispered, maybe she didn't like being a witch. That afternoon, Poppy stayed late in the library, sitting at one of the long tables, surrounded by a stack of books on the life of Madeline Reynolds. You can check those out if you like, Miss Corns, the magical management teacher, said, poking her head around the door. It was strangely quiet. Even Miss Gilbert, the librarian, had left. I know. Poppy looked embarrassed. It's just easier to work here sometimes. Miss Corn nodded. Noisy brothers and sisters at home? Not exactly, Poppy confessed. I'm an only child, actually. But my parents like to watch me study, if that makes sense. They watch you study? Miss Corns walked into the room. I'm not sure what you mean. Poppy gave a nervous laugh. Well, they care a lot about me being at Ruffersfield, you see. My great-grandmother Mabel Radcliffe came here and they want me to do well. And I'm sure you will, said Miss Corn. But they care so much about me being a witch that it's almost a bit, smothering. Poppy finished guiltily. Smothering? Miss Corn's questioned, raising a gray, hairy eyebrow. My mom always sits in the same room with me when I'm doing homework, Poppy explained. She wants to keep me company. She's very quiet because she doesn't want to disturb me. So she won't read anything because the page is rustling, and she doesn't knit or anything. So she just sits there and watches me. Poppy paused for a moment and finished up. It's a bit hard to concentrate when someone's staring right at you. I see, Miss Corn said, and judging from the sympathetic look on her face, Poppy got the feeling she did not really understand. Poppy got the feeling that she really did understand. There was companionable silence as Miss Corns moved around the room, straightening the odd book into place and dimming some of the light bulbs. She paused in front of a long back wall, where a display of gilded-framed certificates hung. Well, your great-grandmother Mabel certainly was an astonishing student, she commented. Come take a look, Poppy. She was voted Witch of the Year 6 times at school. Poppy got up and walked over to Miss Corns, who just read a row of certificates. Each one had Mabel Radcliffe's name engraved on it in perfect gold script. What do you have to do to be voted Witch of the Year? She couldn't help asking. Simple, Miss Corns replied. You just have to be the best, nothing short of perfect. It's not about magic either, she said, tapping at her chest. It's about what's in here. You must be committed to your art, passionate about it. Well, I'll never be Witch of the Year, Poppy sighed, which will disappoint my parents to no end. Oh, Poppy, you're an extremely talented young witch. Thank you, Poppy nodded glumly, tucking a clump of loose brown hair back into one of her braids as she walked along the wall, staring at names of past witches who achieved the highest honor bestowed on a Ruffersfield girl. Poppy stopped in front of an empty space where a dusty rectangular outline was still visible. "Why was the certificate taken down?" she asked Miss Corns. "That was awarded to Madeline Reynolds." Miss Corns lowered her voice. "She went over to the dark side and became one of the most evil witches this century's ever seen. Ended up in Scrub's prison. Hard to believe she got it voted Witch of the Year, although," Miss Corns admitted, "she was rather famous for her spell chanting. Everyone always said Madeline Reynolds had the most extraordinary voice." "Yes, she loved opera," Poppy added. "I'm studying her for my biography project." "Indeed, that's an interesting choice." Miss Corns gave Poppy a strange look, but she didn't say anything further on the subject. "Turn off the lights when you leave, please, Poppy. The door will lock behind you automatically." After Miss Corns had gone, Poppy sat back down on her table and stared at one of the books she had found. On the cover was a picture of young Madeline Reynolds, smartly dressed in her Ruffersfield uniform. She was smiling at the camera, but it was an automatic "say cheese" sort of smile that didn't reach beyond her mouth. Poppy was sure she could see a wistful longing in Madeline Reynolds' eyes, a sadness that made her wonder just how happy Madeline had been here at Ruffersfield. Maybe she hadn't wanted to be a witch, either. Maybe her parents had forced her to study magic when all she really wanted to do was study opera. Sighing heavily, Poppy sketched a cupcake on the corner of her notebook, wondering what had gone wrong in Madeline Reynolds' life to send her over to the dark side. Okay, so that's going to be it for today. Man, I've only did 4 chapters, and there's a lot more chapters than that. So this will probably be more like 6 parts. Yeah, 6 parts. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. This has been really, really long. Oh, I'm also thinking about maybe doing short stories. I have 2 books filled with short stories. In the comments, please tell me what would you think about having mini story times in between books. You know, nice little short stories. Because I have plenty of different ones I could do that are that'll probably won't take even 30 minutes and would be good for the lull in between. Okay, well, that's it for today. Bye!